every single influencer talking about peptides, but are they safe? And if they are, why isn't your doctor talking about them? Can a little injection really boost fat loss, help you to age slower, remove inflammation, help your body to heal, eliminate pain? Have you heard about the Barbie peptide, the one that makes you look tan, increases your sex drive, and helps you lose body fat? And what's the difference between skincare that has peptides in it, cosmetics that have peptides in it, protein powders with peptides, peptides that multi-level marketing companies are selling and influencers, and peptides like Ozempic, Wegovy, or even insulin? What is a peptide?
Peptides.
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 Are peptides the answer to an exciting breakthrough for women's health?
What are peptides?
Should you put a peptide in your skincare routine?
6 million peptides out there.
Take a look at hot mama. Also, look at that tan.
I know.
Oh my God.
So what are peptides?
What do we need to know about it? And where do we need to exercise extreme caution? What's hype? What's real? What should we try? What shouldn't we try? Answers to all of that and more here today on The Chalene Show. By the way, if you are new to my show, I should probably just tell you that I am not a doctor. I'm not an expert. I'm just a girl. I'm just a girl who's very curious about all of these things. I've got ADHD, which means I can hyper focus and do a lot of research. And I've done a deep dive into peptides because probably like you, I've noticed everybody and their brother in the last couple of years has been talking about peptides. So I want to start with a little story. Just a few weeks ago, I go out to dinner with one of my friends. The next morning, I call him to see how he's doing. And he tells me he's in the hospital. I'm like, in the hospital? What do you mean you were fine last night? What happened? Well, this friend of mine is a competitive fitness, like they do fitness competitions, you know, like the physique stuff, which I'm not a fan of, but we'll save that for another episode. He tells me that he's been doing peptides and everybody in the fitness space, quote, everybody who's doing competitive bodybuilding, competitive physique competitions, everyone's now doing peptides. So if you want to be competitive, if you want to win, if you want to look your best when you get on stage, you got to do what everybody else is doing, or so he tells me. So he's doing a whole bunch of different peptides. That morning, he had done an injection, and shortly after injecting himself with a peptide he purchased online for $38 from a, quote, very reputable source. Oh, yeah, I'm sure. Shortly after injecting himself, which, by the way, he mixed up the powder himself and injected himself. So how much of a dose is he getting? Is it the right dose? Is any of this being supervised by a medical professional? No. And shortly after injecting himself, he felt like he was going to die. He literally felt like things were coming out of both ends. He felt faint. He felt sick. He felt hot and sweaty and like he was going to pass out. And I'm sure we've all done this, so I'm not going to judge. But where you're like, I don't want to bug anybody, so I'll just drive myself to the emergency care. And gets in his car, starts to drive and realizes, oh, I'm going to pass out. So he pulls over to the side of the road, gets out of his car and literally passes out on the sidewalk, calls 911, ends up in the hospital. Now, the reason why I'm telling you this is not to scare you because, frankly, we don't even know what was in the peptide. He was extremely dehydrated. It could be that there was a reaction between that and another peptide he was taking. And that's one of the things that we have to be so careful about. And we're going to get into that further. But that experience blew my mind. It was the first time I realized that peptides have become the standard in fitness competitions because as they're getting close to the time when they compete and get on stage, the goal is to get as lean as possible. So they often will restrict a lot. And that's part of the hardest part about getting on stage is doing that restricting so you can get your body fat as absolutely low as possible. Well, it's a lot easier to restrict when you're taking a dose of a peptide that impacts your hormones, like a GLP-1. Now, that experience sparked my interest to understand, is everybody seeing every single influencer on TikTok, on Instagram, and on YouTube talking about peptides? And what's the difference between peptides that we would put on our skin, peptides that we mix into our supplements in the morning, and peptides that we inject? Before we talk about peptides, we first have to talk about amino acids. Now, our bodies are made up of amino acids, and we want to think of amino acids as like a singular Lego block, right? Like a little brick of Legos. And a peptide is a little teeny tiny stack of just maybe between 2 to 20 amino acids. That's a peptide. It's a little chain, a short chain of amino acids. That's what a peptide is. Now, a protein is made up of a lot of it. So it's like, think of it as like a Lego structure. It's big. Proteins have to, most often they're not tiny, so they can't get into our cells the same way a peptide can. Technically, peptides usually contain between 2 to 20 amino acids. I mean, do you need to know all this? I guess so, because you need to understand the difference between a collagen peptide and an injectable peptide. Proteins are longer chains, and they often are folded into more complex shapes. So they can't be injected into the bloodstream, if you will. Peptides act like messengers, especially when we're talking about the type of peptides that we inject, which are oftentimes something that require a prescription. Those type of peptides, those are messengers. So that messenger tells your body what to do. Now, we produce peptides naturally, but injectable peptides are things that are made in the lab, and they have a longer, I almost said shelf life, but they last a little longer, and they are messengers that tell the body to do things like store fat, reduce blood sugar, lower inflammation, produce collagen. The problem for most consumers is that the word peptide is being slapped on everything, and there's very little regulation around it. So like whenever we see the word peptide, like on skincare or cosmetics, we're like, oh, wow, it contains peptides. This must be really good. Or this is a collagen peptide or a protein peptide. And now we're seeing companies use terms unregulated like peptide-like, because the word peptide just triggers this response in us like, oh, it must be good. But in this episode, I want to speak mainly about injectable peptides. Injectable peptides are what's all the rage. It's probably what you're hearing a lot of influencers talk about. I think that there's incredible benefits. In fact, I know there's incredible benefits. There are some that are FDA regulated, and then there's a lot that are not, which in all transparency, I have to tell you that I'm taking a few peptides that are not FDA approved. And I'm going to share with you how it is I've decided to take them, and you can take it. Like, I'm not the expert. I want you to know that. Like, I think it's really important that you do your research and you understand if, in fact, you might want to consider a peptide, how to do so in a way that is the safest and perhaps most necessary for you, if in fact it is. Injectable peptides are therapeutic. In other words, they are things that might be FDA approved, like insulin. Insulin is a peptide, and it's obviously FDA approved, as is some semaglutides like Wegovy, Ozempic. Those are FDA approved peptides. That means that they've done lots of testing to figure out if there's side effects. The dosages are carefully regulated, and it's controlled by the FDA. You can only get it by prescription and only from an FDA-approved pharmacy. But you probably have noticed a lot of people taking other forms of GLP-1s, which are less expensive, not always FDA approved, sometimes they are, and they're often getting them from compounding pharmacies. Some of these compounding pharmacies are not FDA licensed pharmacies. So what does that mean for you and I? Is it safe for us to consider a pharmacy that's not FDA approved or FDA licensed? Well, the sentiment lately, it's interesting, has been very divided. So I think there's this extreme distrust around traditional medicine, traditional doctors, traditional, the traditional healthcare system, and that would include the FDA. The FDA has been set up to protect us as consumers, right? Like, so they're regulating, like, what is the dosage? What are the side effects that people are experiencing? And it's carefully monitored and carefully regulated. The problem is we just don't really trust our government. You will hear the argument that the FDA is a revolving door of former pharma executives who are just on the FDA kind of to do a favor for other big pharma companies and making sure that the right drugs get approved and that the pricing can be jacked up really super high so that people who need these drugs can only get them through their insurance companies. They're incredibly overpriced, but the very same drug can be available through a compounding pharmacy that's not FDA approved. And it's exactly the same thing, but goes by a different name. And it's like a tenth of the price. I'm not on one side or the other. This is not my area of expertise, but I can tell you that there is a growing sentiment that the FDA can't be trusted. And a lot of influencers who you may be following will almost discount any doctor or any pharmacy that's associated with the FDA because they're like, what do they know? Like they're not up to date on their research, right?
So the thing about a surgeon, like unless he is dealing in the research chemical space, he's not going to know anything about Retatrutide. Like that's not on their radar right now, because like an actual doctor, an actual surgeon, they're going to be recommending the things that are, FDA approved at this point and being prescribed, which is Ozempic and Mounjaro. So semaglutide and tirzepatide, like that's what they're going to recommend. They don't even know what Reta is. Most of them don't anyway.
So the injectable that individual is talking about in that particular clip is one that is not FDA approved. It's called, hopefully I say it, everyone refers to it as Reta, but I think the proper pronunciation is Retatrutide. And it is a GLP-1 that has 3 different ways that it acts. So it suppresses the appetite. It acts very much the same way a regular GLP-1 does, but in clinical trials, which it's not FDA approved yet, many have reported that it actually helps them to reduce their body fat and gives them better muscle retention. So as you might expect, the bodybuilding and fitness communities are going haywire, like going bonkers over this GLP-1. And here's the thing. With many of these injectables, for example, BPC 157, which is a injectable peptide that's, again, not approved for human use, but it's one that I'm taking along with TB 500 to help my body heal faster, to reduce inflammation, and to reduce pain. Now, I'm taking it through my physician. He gets it from a compounding pharmacy that he's been working with for years. He's an expert in this area. So I feel safe to take it not only from him, but with him monitoring my blood work, my progress, and because he intimately knows this compounding pharmacy. Another peptide that the fitness community and bodybuilders absolutely love, again, not FDA approved, is called Melanotan 2. Now, Melanotan is a peptide that many people, again, not FDA approved for human use, but many people have been using it for years, injecting themselves to make themselves tan. Like right now, the reason why I'm wearing a robe is I'm marinating in self-tanner. I am marinating in Elan Pure. That's the self-tanner that I use because I'm doing a little trip tomorrow. And so I want to be nice and brown. The thought of doing an injection and getting like super tan, that's interesting. So I had never heard about that until I was preparing for this episode. So I started looking into it. I'm like, what is this Melanotan? Like, I'll ask my doctor about it. And the more I read on, I'm like, absolutely not. No, thank you. So it makes you super tan everywhere. Like you have no tan lines. It also increases your libido. Men, they say, will have an erection for up to 40 minutes. So like it's literally been used to treat ED, and it reduces body fat. Wait a second. I'm tan, higher sex drive, and leaner? Sign me up, right? Well, no, because I looked further into the research and found that there are a lot of really crazy side effects. So I'm not even going to ask no, thank you. But that's not to say that you won't hear influencers raving about this particular peptide, despite the fact that there's lots of negative side effects. Serious side effects include kidney strain, growth of moles, increased risk of melanoma overactivation, obviously, the darkening of moles and freckles. I already have so many, I'm Scottish and Irish, so I've already have so many moles and so many freckles, and I've had skin cancer before. So that's a definite no for me. nonetheless, lots of people are taking it.
Melanotan is a really cool peptide because it actually tells your body to produce melanin, and it makes you get a tan artificially without even having to go in the sun. Now, if you combine it with going in the sun, you'll get a tan even faster. But for people maybe who have, worry about skin cancer and stuff like that, I used it like the second half of my career, I guess, just to get a really good tan. And it actually works too good. You got to be careful because if you get so dark, you can actually turn like purplish.
I looked at all the research myself, and every single one of us has the ability now to look at research by going to a site like Perplexity, which is an AI site, and you can sort according to academic research. So it's not just searching the web. It's not looking at, magazines. It's not looking at blog posts. It's actually looking at academic, peer-reviewed in many cases, academic research. And you can select what type of research you want to look at. But again, even with research, it's easy to cherry pick research. It's easy to say, here's what I want to find, and then go and find it. So what is it that we need to know about these peptides? Well, they're very helpful. And peptides are something that we produce naturally. But what you need to be aware of is that if it's not something you're getting from a physician who actually understands these peptides from an FDA-approved pharmacy, then you just have to be more careful about the research and due diligence that you're doing. That's all. That's my suggestion, and it's just my opinion. Again, I am not the expert here. There are several different classes of injectable peptides. There's the FDA-approved. Then there's gray market. Gray market are things that you can get by prescription from typically a reputable pharmacy and a reputable provider. So gray market would be things like CJC 1295. BPC 157, TB 500. These are injectables that seem to be relatively safe, but they are still undergoing scientific testing and they are not yet approved by the FDA. For example, the BPC 157 that I injected this morning has not been approved for use in humans, but I'm taking it. I know. I feel safe doing that because I did a lot of research and I feel very safe with the pharmacy that I'm getting it from. It's here, it's local. I can walk right into the pharmacy. But don't forget, at one point, Botox was not approved by the FDA. At one point, Wegovy was not approved. Like all of these things have to go through clinical trials. It takes a very long time and it's very, very expensive. But I've seen lots of crazy stories of people buying peptides online where it's not regulated. They don't know, nothing's being tested. They don't know if what they're receiving actually has in the vial what they think they're getting. No one's supervising or teaching them how to do these injections themselves at home. And they're treating these injectables as benign. And frankly, I think we have to be really, really careful. That means it's more important than ever for you not to be influenced just by influencers. And y'all, I'm an influencer. I don't call myself an influencer, but like at the end of the day, it's what I do, right? I share with you what I do, the mistakes that I've made, the things that have helped me. And sometimes those things that have helped me, I can find a company that I've been using and I'll say like, hey, can I get a discount for my people if I talk about this thing? And then I get paid. I get paid to talk about that thing. So yeah, you benefit by getting a discount, but like I also benefit by making money off of these things that I recommend. And that's what we have to be really careful of. I have to be careful of it as an influencer, not to be lured by the dollars. Like I have to always remind myself, like, what is in the best interest of my community? Because at the end of the day, trust is all that we have. Like if you lose people's trust, dude, you're done. And every single week I get contacted, I guess you could say recruited by different companies that are like, hey, if you sign people up for this peptide, we will give you up to 50%, 40%, like easy. That's just like the going rate for influencers to get people to sign up for these peptides. And I am not interested in doing that. And here's why. I think it's more important that you do your research. So if there's someone you're following who their whole personality has become a peptide lately, and you've wondered like, why is every piece of content about this particular peptide? you might just do a little bit of research and find out if in fact it's because it's been so life-changing for them, which it might be. It totally might be. And it might also be because it's life-changing physically and financially. That's not to say it's bad, but you should be aware. That's all. I'm just saying you should be aware that there's a ton of money to be made in peptides. There's a ton of money to be made in anything that the population goes, wait, this could be the magic bullet. This might be easier. And I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying we have to slow down and we need to think about these things and we need to ask ourselves, do I need this? I recently did an interview with the chief medical officer of MIDI Health, and we talked about probably the most popular peptide today. I'm sure you can guess. It's a GLP-1. It's an injectable weight loss peptide, which can be compounded. Now, MIDI Health, the company, the chief medical officer that I interviewed, they don't mess around with anything that's not FDA approved. But there's lots of doctors out there who do. Like I said, the doctor that I'm working with here in Miami in order to get BPC 157, because it's not FDA approved, I couldn't get it through MIDI. I had to go through my local doctor. But with MIDI Health, they're offering GLP-1s, but you're working with a provider and an FDA approved pharmacy. But one of the things we talked about is all the different ways right now, this particular GLP-1 is being studied at much lower dosages. Some call it a microdose, some call it a whisper dose. Some people are calling it a dose at which it does not suppress your appetite, but there is benefits for cognition. We're seeing a decrease in Alzheimer's, a decrease in Parkinson's, a decrease in cancers. So there's tremendous benefits. And I had a phone call today with my mom about it because I listened to that podcast. Should I be doing a whisper dose of a GLP-1? And I said, Mom, I think it's really important that you talk to a provider, not me, and let's look at your history. Let's look at all of your markers. Let's look at your hormone levels. Let's look at what things I'm not the person to answer that to you, but I think it's really important that you have an informed conversation with a reputable clinician. And then this is something I think that's come up a lot too, is I see so many influencers who are now coaching people with peptide use. And at first I was like, what's this? Oh my gosh, what is this person who's, a fitness influencer, who's become a menopause expert? What business do they have in coaching people on peptides? I'm just going to tell you that was my first instinct, because like all of these people that I've been following for years are suddenly like peptide coaches. But then I realized, it's probably pretty important. Again, just like anything, if you've got someone who knows what they're talking about and they have the time to actually help keep you accountable, make sure that you're getting in adequate protein, make sure that you're actually lifting weights, make sure that you're actually building muscle and working on the lifestyle choices, like that seems to me like a good idea. But as with anything, a coach is a human, right? So of course there's coaches out there who don't know jack and who really are just trying to get people signed up on peptides and really aren't helping them to modify their lifestyle and to make sure that they're doing this in the healthiest way possible. And Lord knows that most clinicians, especially if it's insurance covered, they don't have the time to spend an hour with you a week, let alone 15 minutes with you at your appointment. And in fact, that's one of the reasons why I talk about MIDI, because my own experience with them, the first time I had a MIDI appointment, I was like, wait, why are we still on this Zoom call? Like, don't you have to go? Like, you're actually listening to me? This is remarkable. This is amazing. And that's how that company was set up. But in most situations, I've found that a lot of these telehealth companies are treating peptides like it's an Amazon shopping cart. Like they lead with the product. You go to the website, you put what you want in the cart. And then of course, you have to get approval by a medical provider. But the medical provider isn't asking you a bunch of questions and then recommending the peptide. With a lot of these telehealth companies, just buyer beware. They're leading with you, the consumer, picking the peptide that you want. I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing. Listen, I did the exact same thing with my doctor. I went into him. He's looked at my blood work plenty of times. And I said, hey, I've been doing my research. I want to know everything that you can tell me about BPC 157 and TB 500. I'd done my research, but I'm curious where you stand on this. I also, after interviewing Dr. Chalene Johnson, I said, what do you think about me doing a whisper dose of a GLP-1 like for my brain health? And I appreciate that at the moment he said, I just don't think that's, you're doing so many other things. Why add that? It's a good point. But I can tell you why I was interested, for the same reason all of us are interested when we see or hear someone who we see as the pinnacle of health and they're doing a peptide. It's like, I want that too. I want the advantage. Wait, if this person is smart and they've got money and they're always doing the latest and the greatest, I want that. I want access to that too. I think that's one of the reasons why there's such a weird backlash online. There's almost like an anger that's involved when we talk about peptides, specifically the weight loss peptides, right? Because, and I've noticed it's primarily with women. I'll see comments underneath, say, a fitness professional, always a female, or a woman who's lost a ton of weight from a GLP-1, and not all, but like if there's going to be a mean, cruel, or like accusatory comment underneath, it's from another woman. And oftentimes they're saying like, it's cheating, or why would you do that if fill in the blank, or that's taking medication away from people who need it, that's a myth. But it's almost like this accusation, like this anger, like, you're cheating. How dare you? Which I don't understand. And I think part of that is because we as women are exhausted by trying to be good girls, trying to do it the right way. And so especially the women who I see making these comments, they're the ones who are like, this isn't fair. I have been torturing myself and restricting and trying to do it the right way. And now are you telling me I could just take a shot and lose the weight? It's that easy. So I don't think it's anger over the medication. I don't think it's anger over cheating. I think it's anger over being confused by like, what are the rules? What do I need to do to be my healthiest, to look my best, to live the longest? That's what we want. And we want to do so. All of us want to do. And I think that's normal. And I think that's fine. But where we need to be very careful is getting caught up in the hype. Doing something because everyone else is doing it, therefore it must be safe. Think of the things not so many years ago that we all just did because everybody was doing it. And we're like, well, it must be legit because everybody's doing it. Have you ever looked personally at research regarding, say, Advil or any over-the-counter sinus medication? You've probably taken it, and you've taken it and didn't even think about the research or the ramifications because you're like, well, everybody else takes it, so it must be safe. And I think we're in a time now where, because of telehealth, influencers, access to online pharmacies, access to information, access to AI, I think we have to be more vigilant than ever and go slow. Go slower, be less influenced, less tempted to believe that we have to do everything everyone else is doing. And we have to remember that we are an individual science project. I recently had a friend who was like, I want to do a GLP-1 for my brain health. Like I'm not necessarily trying to lose weight, but I'm hearing about all these benefits, and I just don't have time to do some of the things that you do, Chalene. Like I don't have time to do infrared light. I don't have time to do hyperbaric oxygen. I don't have time for these things. So if I can just give myself a shot and have some of these benefits, like why wouldn't I? And I couldn't disagree with her. However, her doctor didn't necessarily know her entire background and her history with food and restricting, or her history with colitis. And taking a GLP-1 might not be the right choice for her. So remember this, no matter what doctor you're talking to, they've got a limited amount of time and they're working only off of the information that you're giving them. So be diligent, be prudent, and be careful. My recommendation would be, friend, listen, I'm asking you, please work with a reputable clinician who's aware of everything that you're taking, who's working with, if not an FDA-approved pharmacy, a pharmacy that they have a relationship with. And if you are going to work with a coach, make sure that your coach is motivated by keeping you as healthy as possible, that they're really applying a lifestyle approach, that they know how much you're exercising and your calorie consumption, and they're actually working with your clinician, not in place of your clinician. Listen, I think of myself as your bossy older sister, so even though I'm not an expert in this area, can I give you some advice? Number one, only use licensed telehealth companies or a licensed medical professional. Number two, make sure you vet the pharmacy. Just because so-and-so said, oh, this is a super reputable pharmacy, you need to understand if in fact, if it is a compounding pharmacy, is it a 503A or a 503B registered with the FDA? Are they PCAB accredited, which is the gold standard for safety and quality? And you can ask any pharmacy, can I get a certificate of analysis of this peptide so that you know that what you're being sold is actually in that little vial? Do not buy peptides from people's random DMs. If they say, oh, you message me on Telegraph or Reddit, red flag, don't DM anybody to purchase peptides. Remember that there are peptides which many people believe are perfectly safe, even though they have not been FDA approved for humans, but you enter that area at your own risk. So take your time, do your due diligence. That's why it's more important than ever that you're working with a licensed medical professional and with a reputable compounding pharmacy. Know the short-term and the possible long-term side effects and weigh your options. Like, are the benefits worth the possible side effects? Is there something else you could do that is FDA approved or that might be safer as an alternative? So, for example, if your goal is to improve your brain health, does it make more sense for you to do hyperbaric oxygen chamber? Again, that's a decision for you to make. Work with a medical professional who's looking at your labs, tracking your baselines, and then test on a regular basis, like every 12 weeks at least, to find out how the peptides are impacting your hormones. Generally speaking, with any peptide, start on as low of a dose as possible. Ask your medical provider to carefully titrate you up. Don't go fast. And lastly, know this, the first thing that you should do is address your lifestyle choices. I mean, before you go injecting a peptide, is your nutrition dialed in? Are you exercising on a regular basis? Are you getting enough sleep? Are you actively spending time with friends and family? Because all of those things are going to make you so much healthier than anything that you inject into your body. Like, we can't use an injection to overcome all the terrible stuff that we're doing in our life. So fix your lifestyle first before you consider a peptide. And if you're curious about the emerging research on GLP-1s, I think you would love this episode with the CMO of MIDI Health, Dr. Chalene Johnson.